Hello, my name is Mariano Avila with WGVU. I'm a producer of Shaping Narratives, and it's a great honor to have our guests here today. This is a panel about the effects of COVID and the pandemic on the Native American community in Michigan. Our host today is Lynn Bardwell, who is a member of Little Traverse Bay Band of Odawa Indians. She has been not just a friend to me, but to the station, and has really led us in understanding ways of better telling stories within, for, and with the Native American communities that surround us. She has helped us produce a documentary that was nominated. Mariano Avila with WGVU. I'm a producer of Shaping We have Narratives, redundancy going on. It's a great honor to have our guests here today. This is a panel about the effects of COVID. We're having technical difficulties here, so I'm just going to mute what's going on and keep going. So what I guess I would like to pick up where we were going, which is introducing some of the work that Lynn has done with our station, which includes an Emmy-nominated documentary called We the Seventh, which not only highlights some of the different folks within our community who do different things, but also took us to one of the biggest Native gatherings in history, to Standing Rock, North Dakota. And she has also been the host of Ngiiwe, which is what has brought us to this particular town hall, I guess. Lynn, it's really a joy as always to work with you, to talk to you, and I'm going to hand it off.
We have the video clip or no?
And unmute yourself, please.
I am unmuted. Can you hear me? Okay. Buju, Nijo Kwain Dijnakaz, Waganak Sing Odawa, Anishinaabe Kwain Dao, Man Makindo Dam, Lowell and Donjiba. My name is Lynn Bardwell, and for the use of the show, I go by my maiden name, which is Thomas. I'm a member of the Little Traverse Bay Bands of Odawa Indians, and I have worked with WGVU on multiple projects. And I think right now we're going to go over to a clip of the documentary that we created a couple of years ago, Standing Rock. All right. Okay, are we ready to begin? Everyone kind of disappeared on me. It's just you two with me. All right. So right now I'm going to throw it over to Bryan so he can introduce himself, and then we'll throw it over to Emily and have her introduce herself, and then we'll get right in with the discussion. So Bryan?
Yeah, Ani, Buju, Nibanami Kanan, Bamose Indishnakas, Mayangan, Dodem, Ganoshikanan, and Donjaba. My name is Bryan Newland. I am presently the tribal chairperson for Bay Mills Indian Community, way up here in the eastern Upper Peninsula of our great state and on the shores of the Big Lake. And I'm happy to be here. I'm grateful for the opportunity to join you and look forward to our discussion.
Emily?
Miigwech. Ani, Damon Quay, Indigenous, Ngiiwe, and Dodom, Cross Village, Lansing, and Donjaba, Harbor Springs, Enda. In my community known as Strawberry Woman, I am from the Eagle Clan. I come from Cross Village and Lansing, and I live in Harbor Springs. And I too want to share my sentiments of gratefulness and honor to be asked to speak here today. So, and with such fine individuals. So, miigwech.
Well, Ngiiwe, for coming and taking the time out of your guys' busy schedule. I know it's so busy that actually, Bryan, you have to step off at 3 o'clock for a very important meeting, more important than this one. But anyways, we'll move on. So I'll start with Bryan. As the current president of Bay Mills, like you said, and you've also served as the president, an appointee to the President Obama administration as senior policy advisor for the Department of Interior. And you currently serve as the Michigan Advisory Council for Environmental Justice. I'm wondering if you could please explain what part or role does our casino revenue play in the governmental functions or providing our services to your community members? In essence, how is our government's funded?
Well, I really appreciate that, Lynn. A lot of people associate casino gaming with it's just a business, a for-profit business, right? And you look to Las Vegas and you see these big glitzy casinos, and they're owned by private companies with shareholders, and the profits return directly back to the owners. Tribal casinos are for-profit enterprises, but the profits are used to fund tribal government services. And so casinos are, in essence, our tax base as tribal governments. And without casinos, it really limits our ability to fund important governmental services that we provide both to our tribal citizens on our lands, as well as non-tribal citizens who live within our reservation boundaries or travel through our reservations.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification. Most recently with the state of Michigan's, I don't know what you want to call it, the next shutdown. There's a lot of chatter on Facebook talking about how casinos are staying open and it's just for the money. But, as my role as a person on Facebook, I've always often commented and having to explain what our casinos, actually go for and why we choose to stay open. And so I want to go to Emily. You are now currently a tribal counselor for Little Traverse Bay Bands. And you're a member of the Michigan Education Council, and you served also as a child welfare commissioner for the Little Traverse. I'm wondering if you could walk me through some of the effects and tribal responses to the pandemic, particularly as it pertains to the children of our community.
Sure. So I want to say that my work as a Child Protective Service worker and also being on our Child Protective Services, our ICWA board, provided me an opportunity to learn more about our community, learn more about our needs, day-to-day living, what questions folks have, where some of the gaps are in our programming and services. In addition, able to learn how some of those barriers and, humble activities and how state government also interacts with our folks. So it really gave me a good, wonderful basis for me to be open, understanding, and empathetic to many situations our community members and our nation engages in. Regarding our children and families, I would like to touch upon a little bit the casino revenue. I also want to say that casino revenue supports our employees, supports families. It provides opportunity for not only tribal citizens, but also non-natives to work, to have healthcare, to have benefits, to have an opportunity for time off, to spend time with family. So our enterprises that our tribal government engages in really focuses on supporting family, community, and providing opportunity for a healthy and good income. In addition, the revenue to which we were talking about was able to provide support for our families and children. We at LTBB provided COVID relief funds to all of our citizens, at all ages, so that we could assist families with, toiletries, with food, with some of those allowable expenses based on federal mandates that came with the COVID funding. So we were able to also set up a mask drop when talking about citizens in the 23 service area, but also those beyond. We have to ensure we remember and support all those to the best of our ability, all our folks here and beyond. So through the executive side, they coordinated a mask drop. They coordinated with our tribal farm, food boxes to be delivered. I know one of our counselors assisted in that effort as well. So granted, we have casinos. However, those dollars reach to support our citizens, but also their family members who may or may not be tribal citizens as well.
So thank you for that. Bryan, did you want to tell a little about how Bay Mills has responded to this pandemic for your tribal citizens?
Sure. There's it is an evolving response, but what I will say is the very first thing that we did is establish our goal, and then establish the decision-making structure that we were going to use. And this might sound boring to people who aren't steeped in how government works, but this it set the foundation for our response. And we set a very clear goal from the beginning, and we said it out loud, which is that our objective was everybody in our community on the reservation and our employees survives this pandemic. That's our goal. And then we set up values for our decision-making structure. The first was that every action we take has to be geared toward protecting public health. The second value or principle that we put in place was every decision we take has to protect the medical and financial well-being of our employees. And then the third one that we establish is that all of our decisions must also take care of the tribe's long-term economic well-being. So we established a goal. It's ambitious, and then we put a decision-making principles around that. And the other thing that we did was we accepted that we as a tribal council in our tribal administration, were going to be put in a position to make decisions on a short time frame without all of the information that we would like to have to make a decision. And so in doing that, we have to apply those three principles and err on the side of those three principles toward our stated objective. And so initially we didn't have any data about how many COVID cases were up here. You guys remember the early days of the pandemic, there was no testing available. So our operating assumption was COVID is everywhere. We moved our entire government to remote operations within 72 hours. We closed our casino and guaranteed pay for our employees for a month before there was any federal relief that came down the pike. And that was a huge financial obligation on our part. But in addition to just being the right thing to do, there's a public health benefit to that, which is if people can't have their basic needs met, if you are desperate today, you're going to put your long-term welfare on the shelf to take care of your need to put food on the table today. And if that means going out and exposing yourself to COVID, well, you got to put food on the table. So we understood the importance of providing paychecks to our employees. We also pulled all of our tribal court inmates out of local jails because of the risk. They're under 24/7 government control, and we wanted to make sure that they were safe. And so, those were the initial steps that we took. And ever since, everything we've done has been guided toward that long-term goal, and with those three principles for decision making. And it served us well so far. We have to date had only 14 total cases of COVID-19 on the reservation. And to our knowledge, only one tribal casino employee who had contracted COVID was not a workplace transmission. and we've been very aggressive in our response, always erring on the side of those three principles.
That's awesome to have 14, only 14, especially, I live down here in Grand Rapids where we're hearing hundreds of cases, a day in Kent County in the area. When you mentioned that you went completely virtual, and I know both of you in your tribal governments went virtual, were there any unforeseen challenges in creating this virtual workplace? And did it affect how tribal services were being decided or worked on during that virtual period? Emily?
So from the legislative side, which our government is a 3-branch government, and I sit again on the legislative side with tribal council, we had to recalibrate. Echoing Bryan's thoughts, how could we create an environment that would be safe and supportive to our employees in the legislative wing, while supporting our executive and judicial branch to do the same. So we had to recalibrate. We had to find a way for our staff to stay home, find a way to communicate across our branch of government with executive to continue having government work. How do we recalibrate our meetings? Do we meet through Zoom? What online platform do we engage in? What mechanism do we use to purchase these particular items that we need? Knowing that our council chambers would not be suitable nor safe for the type of situation we're in, we had to quickly change our government structure to all majority being remote. So we've been able to create a process where we have signatures being done, electronic signatures. We can have staff communicating with each other to ensure resolutions, statutes are being fully implemented. So I think on a whole, our government it's remarkable to see the work, the cross communication, the teamwork, the support that we've been able to implement as LTVB. So it's been difficult. We do run into challenges when it comes to family members, having to provide childcare, schooling, a lot of those day-to-day activities have continued to exist right in this pandemic. And how do we support our staff when they need to take time to care for their daily lives and their family while maintaining the government structure?
Thanks. Does that sound familiar to you, Bryan? Like having to restructure your tribal government?
Yeah, it made tribal government services harder to get for our tribal members.
Virtual?
Yeah, it made our tribal government services harder to reach for a lot of our tribal members, and we did our best to be accommodating. We do our own license plates on the reservation, so we just simply said, we are not going to. We did a tribal executive order. We're not going to enforce license plate expirations because you can't come in and renew your license plates. We extended fishing licenses for our commercial fishers because we didn't want people coming into the office and having person-to-person contact. I think for us, one of the most important things that we did, we always tried to communicate everything we were doing throughout this process, not just in the government itself, but to our people, and be very candid about our limitations, what we didn't know, and explain the rationale behind everything we were doing. Initially, I was doing community updates 3 times a day because things were changing so rapidly. But I wanted everybody to feel like they were in the know, and we wanted to build up that trust in our decision making, because in a crisis, you have to have. You can't be fighting the battle on 2 fronts. You can't be fighting internally and then trying to address a problem. So we just said, we're not hiding anything. We're not holding anything back. Here's how we're making decisions. Here's what we know. Here's what we're doing. Here's why we're doing it. And that got a lot of early buy-in from our community and our employees. And it made the whole process of confronting the pandemic much easier. The other thing that we did, though, that was really important, I think, which was we gave permission to our employees to make mistakes. We said, guys, this is a crisis. We're operating with limited information, and things are changing fast. We all know our objectives. We're going to make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. All right. We don't have time for to massage egos and fret about the mistakes. We just have to do the best we can with that decision-making structure and move forward. This isn't going to be perfect. And that really kind of, anybody who's worked in, any office setting, office politics, a lot of times you have people who are afraid to make mistakes, who think like they'll be blamed. And I communicated, our council communicated that we are responsible together. We'll make mistakes, we'll own them. But if we're going to make those mistakes, we're going to do it, on the side of meeting our objectives. And that really freed up a lot of people to just do their best. And we told people, so just do your best with what you got. And if you screw up, we'll set it aside and we'll fix it when we can. And getting that information out there, getting community buy-in, getting buy-in internally, like this isn't a time for politics. This isn't a time for hiding information. We're just all in this. We're going to solve this problem together, has just been enormously beneficial, and allowed us all to focus on the pandemic instead of internal politics and all that nonsense.
I really like the part where you're talking about, transparency and, supporting each other within the government. I kind of wish that was like everyone's approach to this pandemic. I think we would have not still be here in this kind of situation. But before Bryan has to leave, I kind of want to have him talk a little bit more about what kind of help, if any, have tribes received from either the local, the state, or federal level during these past several months of this pandemic? And what has been your experience maybe utilizing some of that assistance? I know Emily alluded to the federal aid. And so if you could talk a little bit about that, that would be great.
Well, what I can say, at least in our experience at Bay Mills, is locally and regionally, we were not the help takers, we were the help givers at Bay Mills. We were, through our tribal college advanced manufacturing program, they dropped everything they were doing and started using 3D printers to manufacture medical face shields. And we were providing them to hospitals, doctors, first responders. We were the first people, the first government and organization in northern Michigan to do community surveillance testing. So you recall back in the early days of the pandemic, you practically had to be dying of COVID before you could get a COVID test. And once we had the equipment, we said we're gonna use our testing equipment to try to find COVID and see its prevalence, not only on the reservation but the surrounding communities, because we're not an island. And we were doing all kinds of other things, food pantries for the public. And we had to explain to our tribal members initially, like, because we're not an island, this virus isn't going to just stop at the reservation boundary. It is in our interest to take care of the communities around us. And it was frustrating at times because we were sharing our data with the local health departments. We were sharing our resources. We're not a wealthy gaming tribe, so we were paying our employees and for not working, many of them not tribal members. And when we would ask for help from local governments or even from the state, it was often initially, it wasn't forthcoming. And that was very frustrating because to me, it felt like here we are trying to take care of ourselves and help our neighbors take care of themselves. But when we needed help, we were told to get in the back of the line. And that was very taxing emotionally because you sit there and it feels like you're on your own. With the federal government, we as Indian people, we're used to just railing on Indian Health Service for its shortcomings. I will give a lot of credit to the Bemidji area staff at Indian Health Service because they have worked very hard to get us the resources that we need, especially testing supplies, to do our part. And we use that surveillance data to then set up our own tribal phasing system for COVID response based on the New Zealand model, not the CDC or the Michigan model. And then we justified where we were at in our restrictions based upon the testing data that we had. And it allowed us to be open for much of the year. But also with the feds, the CARES Act, it was very frustrating getting the funding out to tribes because I felt that some of the federal agencies were not transparent in the process and the formula they were using. And of course, tribes got our CARES Act dollars much later than state and local governments, but we were all required by law to spend that money by December 31st. And it delayed our response by several months and made it much harder to put that money to effective use to stop the pandemic. I think, now we have built a good relationship with our local health departments, with other tribes, in coordinating testing and now vaccination deployment. State government has been, fits and starts, but on the whole, pretty good. And then the federal government, has been the same. There have been some bright spots and some very frustrating spots. But at the end of the day, I think this pandemic has been a lesson that tribes have to build the capacity to take care of ourselves, because when push comes to shove, nobody else is going to rush to our rescue. We can drag them there, but we have to do it ourselves, and that's really kind of the approach we've taken, while extending a hand to our neighbors and our friends, knowing that that's the right thing to do, but it will benefit us as well.
Yeah, I think that was kind of the sentiment that we were using while we were at Standing Rock. We have to protect the water for everybody who utilizes this water source, because, at the end of the day, the federal government isn't going to take care of their mistakes when it comes to tribal reservations or the impact that would have. Emily, what has been your experience with the assistance and the aid to and in and out of the tribe in your community?
So Little Traverse, with our 2 rounds of COVID funding from the feds, we've been able to really, I think we've done a remarkable job at supporting our government structure, our employees and families. I think we've been able to provide testing, provide food, provide services in a remarkable way. We continue to provide elders luncheons, provide PPE. What's unique as well is our ability to continue to support our tribal citizens, their own businesses, our tribal citizen owned businesses, while offering grants to our tribally owned businesses as well, and supporting our tribal court in their expenses, while again harkening back to the emergency disaster relief payments that we provided to tribal citizens and associated administrative costs. So a large part of our funds went out, in fact, to our citizens, and what was able to stay here were to support our enterprises, knowing that we need to continue providing an income for our tribal citizens with their small businesses and what they've coordinated on their own, in addition to our enterprises as well. So I think that as LTBB, we've done a remarkable job at coordinating care. Each of our 3 branches of government meet every Monday to continue to talk about emergency response, to pull together resolutions that we need, push them, have conversations at council, ensure that we have transparency. We host town hall meetings. So I think with the funding we've received from the feds, now, mind you, Bryan, I appreciate the struggle that tribes have had when it came to the process that was taken to ensure those funds are sent to tribes. That was its own frustration. But I think this also spoke to the fact that here at Little Traverse, we were able to pull together what resources we had, work across the aisle, and ensure, when push came to shove, that we were able to respond in a clear, effective, and efficient way. Again, town hall meetings occurred not as frequently, once a month, but I know that executive was updating. We had a tribal COVID website specifically to update our citizens and what was happening. But again, the funding that we have from the feds really assisted us in supporting our folks in their daily lives and on the ground. But I also think this allowed us as a nation to see where we're able to continue growing in economic development, where we can continue to expand our resources for, hopefully there's not another emergency such as this, but you never know what's going to come down the pipe. So I think this has given us an opportunity to grow as a government, grow as a nation, and we've had great success, in my opinion, on the execution of services and programming at this point. But resources, what's enough to ensure the health and well-being of people.
Ngiiwe, guys, I have to leave. I apologize for the inconvenience. But
Good to
Lynn,
see you,
I appreciate you and the folks at WGVU covering tribal issues, because, as you know, people don't always give a voice to what's going on in Indian country. And I think some of the tragic struggles with the pandemic in Indian country have been highlighted, and they should be, because there are a lot of tribes and tribal communities that are paying just a terrible price in this pandemic. But there are also tribes across the country in rural communities that are stepping up and being leaders in pandemic response, not only for our own people, but for our neighbors in our regions as well. And I think that's a story that should be told. So I appreciate you bringing us on to share a little bit about that.
Well, thanks for coming, Bryan, and good luck with your meeting. I know it's a very important meeting.
Ngiiwe.
Bama P.
Bama.
So, Emily, it's just you and I now.
Hey, I'm here.
I had a question about kind of what you already touched on, right? Like, how do we plan for this unforeseen event in the future? And I think you touched on it. Like, so what is Little Traverse doing in regards to like trying to grow beyond the casino revenue to fund our governments?
Yeah, Lynn, I think, at least, so again, all of this is based on my experiences and opinion as being on tribal council. I think for me, this is given, this is an example on how it's important for us to support our gaming enterprises, while also realizing that how we can enter the for-profit world and partnering with non-native agencies to continue finding new ways to grow revenue, partnering with tribal entities to grow revenue. I think the writing's on the wall for us to build those partnerships and those inroads, and figure out where the gaps are when it comes to manufacturing, or what other type of businesses are out there in our service area. But beyond, how can we continue to stretch our resources and our skills to find our nook, to find various areas of revenue?
Yeah, and I think each tribal community has their own source of, fountain of resources. Like Petoskey is a very highly tourism-based state, where I think, Bryan was here, he'd kind of discuss how his community is not, in the fountain of drawing in tourism, whereas Petoskey really has a vital source of tourism there.
Right.
How are you guys capitalizing on that specific resource in your community?
In particular, we have a farm, our Ziba farm, which works with our local communities at farm markets. We provide produce to various food markets here in the area, have places, again, as at our farm markets. We also have our own food stand, if you will, in Mackinac City. We also have, again, our Odawa Casino Resort and Hotel, which again is a destination spot for many individuals who are interested in gaming. We also have Victory Square, which is a multi-business venture with Starbucks, with T-Mobile, with Marriott, which is coordinated with our Odawa Economic Affairs Corporation, OEDMI, as many know it. And that has been, that's been a great example for me to follow. We have great leaders in that particular piece. So they've always been a guide for me as to how we continue to build our capacity in the for-profit world and building our commerce as a tribe. We also have, we are leasing land to Loom, which is a cannabis producing corporation. So we've grown, Lynn, over the past number of years when it comes to economic development. I think we are still in the learning stages as a government, what this looks like, how we continue to grow in response to supporting our enterprises. We also have our traditional burial board, which is working on creating a crematory, a funeral home. So we definitely have, we've grown over the years from our first Victory's Casino, which is on the corner as you come in from the south end of Petoskey, to what we have today. I think we've got strong leaders. I think we have leadership who is open to trying new things. We have an executive who is open to working with and partnering on new enterprises and partnerships. So nowhere to go but up, Lynn, at this point. So
Sounds like you guys have a lot going on.
we do.
So like, I know you touched on it a little bit about some of the things that you were doing for your out of service area citizens. I'm wondering if you could, for those of us listening who don't understand, service area, you had mentioned a 23 county service area. Could you talk a little bit about how, as I know a lot of tribal communities talk about their service area. I'm wondering if we could, inform some of our listeners about what a service area is and how they are carved out.
Yeah, so service areas, again, can be, you can look at, I'll take the CPS, that's statewide. I will take the food and utilities. So we have a program that supports our elders to reimburse for food and utility over the year. And our service area is defined by a statute and our funder as to how far-reaching our citizens are able to access those services, in addition to treaty and ceded territory if you're talking about natural resources. So it's ingrained in doctrine, it's ingrained in statutes, it's ingrained in funding streams. And again, we have I guess a good way to put it would be the northwestern part of Michigan and the eastern part of the UP. However, we also, Child Protective Services, we work with families beyond our 23 county service area. If we have a family in need in Macomb County or in Isabella County, we work with those individuals and those families to ensure that we are in communication with the court system there with updates, and if we so choose to intervene in that case. So again, it depends on the particular program and service. But ultimately, there's several factors that feed into how that service area is created.
So you mentioned earlier that you did some mask drops to citizens from all over. I know you had various stops. I'm wondering, as an urban native living in Grand Rapids, far away from my particular tribe, which is, yours, Little Traverse, I'm wondering if you're hearing anything about how this pandemic is affecting our citizens in these remote places from the actual government home center.
From the context I've had, again, it's recently how are vaccines going to occur? We know that vaccines are coming out there are two types. So how is that happening? We know that as LTVB, we're going to support our citizens here in the immediate area. My question is, how can we have that? How can we support our citizens in Grand Rapids, Lansing, Detroit, Escanaba? That's one of the questions I've been receiving too from citizens. In addition, how are we going to have PPE, which again, from the executive side, our safety compliance officer was able to coordinate those efforts. Healthcare. How are we, a longstanding question has been, how are we to access our tribal health clinic when we live at such a distance? And often, suggestions come up is how can we partner with the local IHS clinic near our citizens and provide support that way? Health has been one of the longest running questions. In addition to some of the tax, right? We have support with taxes when it comes to various purchases based on a tribal and state agreement. Questions come up. How am I able to access that tax agreement resource if I don't live in a tax agreement area? So I think as a government, we need to continue to be advocating, for me as a counselor, to advocate on behalf of our citizens far and wide. And we know a large portion of our citizens don't live in our immediate 3-county area, let alone our service area. So ensuring, before COVID, we had a couple town hall meetings in Grand Rapids. We need to do more of that. We need to specifically take time and create opportunity and programs to ensure that our folks are being taken care of. It's a need, it's a necessity, but they're our family too. So we need to continue being inclusive and find ways to support.
Yeah, I enjoy the conversations that tribes are having with their citizens at large, those citizens that don't live close. It's inspiring as a tribal citizen to have that opportunity to kind of talk about some of the issues that we have. Each community has their own different reality, as well as our urban communities and where our hotspots for our natives live. You brought up your own personal perspective. I'm wondering, from a personal perspective, as you navigate this pandemic, what are some of the challenges you've faced or some resources that you find that have helped you in this last seemingly never-ending series of months of isolation and sitting in virtual reality land?
Oh, Lynn. So I can say that some of the challenges, from a larger scope as a legislator and counselor for our tribe, it's continuing to have that contact with people, right? We're all quarantining, we're all staying home, or if you have to work, you are going to the office or the building or your place of employment. But I miss seeing our people. I miss being able to have those conversations and talking to our elders and constituents. I miss going down to Lansing and connecting with folks, which is still where some of my family lives. So that's been hard. On the flip side, I am thankful for Zoom and such platforms as this, where I can at least still have our phone, right? Phones haven't gone away either. So virtual, phone, other barriers I've seen, really mental health. I've heard from folks in these various platforms about mental health. It's tough. If you don't have an individual who's sick at home, you're dealing with staying at home working, along with daily struggles, along with funding perhaps being an issue, along with your own health and well-being, how it's been difficult in those regards as well. But I think one of the toughest things for me as a legislator is how the decisions I make not only affect our citizens, but truly, I believe it affects everyone around me, native and non-native. So I am constantly calling our counselors, my elders, our executive, and really have built, I think, a stronger rapport with folks because we are in this together. And I think Bryan said it so eloquently. We are all figuring this out as we go. And true, mistakes are made. However, I firmly believe it's because of love and caring and the dedication that we have to minimize the impact of this pandemic on our folks that we've been able to do what we've done. I think it's strengthened our ability to work across our aisle here at Little Traverse. I do believe that. And I think I hope we continue to carry that with us as we move forward, however this pandemic shakes out. So.
Yeah, I think that's a big important point to make, is that, while when we talk about this at the university about how our students are feeling an increase of stress and isolation, but the expectations, right, are all still the same as we plow along life.
Right. Yep.
And so I'm wondering, what are some of the impacts that COVID has had on government, your personal life, the community, that kind of will continue? Like, if we look at a post-COVID world, whenever that may be, what are some of the lasting impacts or changes or, things that are going to maintain after we find some sort of sense of normalcy?
Lynn, I hope that we are able to maintain our sense of community, which we have, but I think this has deepened it even more. I think our sense of humanity, our sense of stronger planning of what resources we have, financial, people, that we find more value and love and support for our employees who've been working tirelessly over the months. And so granted, I'm not an executive, but hearing them on our tribal council meetings and work session and committees, people are working hard, right? They're working very hard. So how can we continue to provide opportunities to support our employees in the future when it comes to, daily living, when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to needing PTO or time away? How can we support mental health, right? These are all things that I think issues that we're seeing. And economic development, I think, again, as I shared earlier, that this is a prime opportunity for us to evaluate what we currently have and be strategic in how we move forward so we can continue to build up what finances we have, ensure that we can plan for not only those who've passed on, but those who are here and those in the future, right? It's our responsibility. It's our responsibility.
Yeah. And I'm wondering with, this whole virtual world, have you seen an increase in citizen participation in the legislative process? I know pre-COVID, everyone had to kind of drive to, the government center. And I'm wondering if people are logging on, leaving it, joining in on the work as.
Lynn, I would say with our town halls, yes. So we have twice a month on average our tribal council work session and regular. We have our committee meetings, but I really see more participation in our town halls, which offers an opportunity for citizens to hear from our enterprises, to hear from all three branches of government on updates with program services and funding. So I do. I see an increase, and I am ever so grateful. And I have high hopes that it will continue, and if not grow. I hope this is given maybe virtually, where folks might not be able to typically join or come to our meetings because we do host them here at our government building, that they can jump online, that they can phone in. I think citizen engagement and input is vital. It's been the cornerstone to who we are as Anishinaabe here in Odawa at Little Traverse. So however we can continue to grow that will only make us stronger.
That's awesome. I think, the more citizens we have involved in the process, I think it's a more holistic approach.
Mm-hmm.
We talk all the time in equity conversations about who's not at the table.
Yes.
And I think having a disenfranchisement between the government and its citizens is problematic, but I feel like, and I've seen this at the university level too, where it's just a click and you're already there. You don't have to get dressed. You don't have to, we're all getting dressed from the waist up these days.
Your cup of joe, your cup of coffee with you. You can sit there. Yes.
The dog barking upstairs. It's all wonderful. That's all the questions that I had. I wanted to open it up to see if any of the viewers had any questions. So right away, I do have a question. Given the history of unethical medical practices on Native communities or communities of marginality from the U.S. government, do you think Native folks will be skeptical about the vaccine? Have you heard anything about that topic?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I have. I have, again, heard by phone calls, some from my family, just reports that, folks are skeptical. Folks are curious how the trials had occurred, who's been part of the trials, were there any Native people included, where was consent included, how do we know that the vaccine is going to be safe given the rapid approach? Yeah, there's a lot of questions from folks. In addition, I've heard this from the broader community as well. So I think there's an overlying theme of trust in the process and trust in the actual, that the vaccine will be safe for folks, especially in the long term. So, and given our history, I think there's an extra level of skepticism.
So when we talk about that, because I've heard it in other populations, the distrust. So with the political climate the way it is, how are you and other tribal leaders handling this high level of mistrust with this particular health concern?
So a suggestion that has been made is when vaccines, even before the vaccines come to our homelands, how can we provide education? How do we provide the transparency and the step-by-step process to which vaccines are created? The scientific process created for mass consumption. I think it's going to be important to be transparent and open in how this process occurred. So I've asked if we could, through the executive with our health department, provide that education for folks. I think education is going to be key, either at once in various doses, pamphlet here, certain PSA here, but I think providing the education in a clear process for folks. So people know, people just want to know. They want to be able to know the process and what it took to get to where we are.
Yeah, and I guess this question would be more from my own desire to know. I know that Bryan left to go to a meeting to discuss just this. I'm wondering, are they including tribal entities into this package of receiving as jurisdiction a number of vaccines?
Yes.
So,
yes. Yep.
Yeah. So what are the thoughts at Little Traverse at administering those vaccines to tribal members or employees, or
so
not to put you on the spot?
Lynn, it's all right. So so this past Monday, we had our emergency team meeting, and this was our main point of discussion were the vaccines and how we'll acquire them, the process of acquisition. It'll be through Indian Health Services. They'll make their way here to our homelands. There's several other tribes involved in that process who will be receiving vaccines. And then our health department has pulled together a structure to disseminate those vaccinations. So we are waiting the official word on how that will occur and when that will occur. Full knowing that there are a series to those vaccinations. So it's going to be a rapid movement, rapid time frame for us to push out what we do have. So actually that's going to be happening, I heard, this month into January. So it's coming soon. So more information on that.
And do you know about how many doses you'll be receiving?
I don't offhand.
How many tribal citizens do you have? And I know my own personal experience working with Little Traverse, we have citizens from one ocean to the other.
Right.
How many total citizens do you currently have enrolled into the membership?
Approximately 4,600 citizens. And that's not including descendants nor their families.
Okay.
Which these would be supporting as well.
Yeah. Well, that's good.
Yes.
I'm very glad to hear that particular aspect. It's not only just our citizens that each of our tribal governments have to be cognizant of. It's our relatives and everyone who lives in our home.
Yep.
That's encouraging. I do have another question. Sorry for my forehead view, but I don't have my glasses on. So health outcomes for Native folks are generally below most ethnic groups. Are there any numbers on how local Native communities in Michigan are doing? Has there been data available on how this has affected our tribal communities in Michigan?
So to my knowledge, the number of cases for tribal folks in the state has been, which I'm grateful for, again, to my knowledge and the data I've reviewed, has been minimal. I'm very pleased to hear that we have had some losses, unfortunately, for COVID, but thankfully our citizens have been, and our community and citizens have been okay.
That's good to hear.
That is my 10-year-old. That's my 10-week-old puppy.
Oh, puppy. I don't know if we have any other questions. I have a couple people, scrounging the internet for questions and stuff. So I don't know if we have any other questions from any other viewers. You and I known each other for so long, we could sit and chit chat and or the pants off of everyone who's joined us.
We could keep going all day, Lynn, I'm sure.
Is there something about this topic that you wanted or thought you wanted to talk about before coming that I didn't ask about?
No, I think you've covered this. I am encouraged to hear again that we have this opportunity to share more about tribes, our tribal government structure, and what's happening with the pandemic. I think I'm encouraged for all of our nations who've responded to the needs of their citizens. It's encouraging, and I know there are questions about the casino and why casinos are open. And
Yeah.
I hope this provided some clarification as to why they are open and why some close. They're vital to the livelihood of our community. So
Yeah, and I think that's kind of like what I personally wanted to get across. That conversation on Facebook was really upsetting, and I'm always an advocate for sovereignty, and it got me booted from a couple of discussions because I brought up, that it isn't just about the money. It isn't
no,
the revenue going to some guy's wallet. It's literally our lifeline for our communities. I have one more question before we return back to the video that we had technical difficulties with in the beginning. Is there a central way for Native folks to get info quickly about resources that are available?
I would check again, if you are familiar with tribal nations in Michigan, most tribes have a COVID resource page on their website. I would also follow State of Michigan. They have wonderful resources as well, to which I know our tribe keeps in line and in communication with as well. In addition, the CDC, which is another outlet that we have. If there's a particular tribe or organization to which you are interested, please let Lynn or I know, and we will do what we can to support you and find those answers.
Yeah, it's always interesting to get people to ask questions about tribal governments, and the information's everywhere. So I guess right now what I'll do is I'll flip it back over before I say goodbye to the video that we missed out on the beginning. So as they say, roll that beautiful bean footage.
My name is Lin Thomas, and I'm a citizen of the Little Traverse Bay Bands of Odawa Indians. I live in the country, I work in the city, and have raised 4 kids. After years of working for Native causes like teaching Native children, serving on tribal council, and being a water protector at Standing Rock, I realized that what I'm up against is 500 years of colonialism. I can't go back to how it was before the Europeans floated in, but I sure can't keep drifting away from who I am. So I'm on a journey to reclaim as much as I can from my ancestors and leave as much as I can for my descendants. In a sense, I'm going home, but I have to leave my comforts to do it. So I'm off to learn as much as I can, but it's going to take me a second to explain how this journey needed me holding a knife to the rear end of a buffalo. If I'm going to reconnect with my traditions, I need to know.
Hey, so as a wrap up, I'm not usually good at these things as wrapping up, but I want to say thank you to Emily Proctor, Little Traverse Bay Band of Odawa citizen and counselor. I want to thank Bryan Newland, president of the Bay Mills Indian community, for spending your time today with us. I know we're all busy. It's important to discuss these very critical tribal issues. I want to thank WGVU for hosting this. I'd like to throw a thanks at Vance Orr for running the technology. I'm unable to do any of that. And Mariano for the glowing introduction and help in creating this conversation and allowing the space and time. This is a crucial conversation for all of our tribal communities. You can catch this interview on YouTube and Facebook or on WGVU's websites, wgvu.org. So if you catch it and you want to share it, please do so. Let's keep this conversation going. Otherwise, I will say Bama P for now. This has been Lynn Bardwell. Miigwech.